Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Asani Pettiford, and I have with me who?
I am Lakeisha Hines.
Lakeisha Hines, that's right. And we are two of the members of the Couples Academy team who come here every single week to give you information that will help change and transform your life and your marriage and your family. Good evening, folks. Hopefully, we'll have some new viewers to the show tonight. But if you are a repeat viewer, if you're a part of our community in the morning, we welcome you. So as you're chiming in, we want to know who you are, where you're from. We want to get analytics on this show so we can figure out how to best serve you. And feel free to leave these comments and let us know what you want. I mean, we're doing an extra show, not to serve us, but to serve you. And we want to be individuals who serve you with a spirit of excellence. So tonight is all about you. Whatever questions you have, this is the time where you want to get it in. So don't wait till the end of the show. Get it in now, because once we get started, boom, we are on a roll. Listen, we have a question based upon a show we did in the morning. It was a random question, and we take all those random questions and bring it into the evening show. And it was a very good question, a question that I want to take time to unpack till we get to the next one. And here it is. Greg Landley says, what do you do if your spouse decides to follow a different religion? Now, this, I'm going to tell you, this is you talk about things that can impact a marriage. This is one of those things, because there's a level of safety and comfort when you share a faith tradition, when you have a value system that you both subscribe to. When you're thinking about religion or faith, is more than just the belief that you have in a God. There's a culture attached to your faith. It's the way that you raise your children. It's the way that, I mean, it impacts almost every area of your life. And so
Right.
when someone changes their faith, their belief, their religion, it's a complete transformation of the way that you see the world, the way you show up, the things that you think need to be done for you, for your I mean, it's just, I've seen it play a huge toll. So let's talk about this, Lakeisha. I want you to weigh in and kind of unpack what is the impact that it has, and what should he or she do about it if they experience this in their marriage.
The impact is great. I 100% agree with you that if there are children involved, that it does impact the way that the children are raised. There's definitely conversations that have to be had about, there's the scripture in the Bible that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so for the children, who are we serving?
Mm.
There has to be some conversation surrounding that. And it can be confusing for children who are already trying to understand faith and different belief systems. And so there can be conflict there where they don't know who to actually listen to, or it can be just extremely confusing. And at each developmental stage, when you have kids that are trying to find themselves, when they're going through that middle childhood and going into their teenage years and adolescence, where they're trying to find their identities. Think about if there were one family that was Chinese, or one parent that was Chinese and the other one is Hispanic, and they're trying to figure out who am I? And people will ask them, who are you? And we get rude a lot of times too and say, what are you? And so they're not able to answer that question. It's similar when you're dealing with belief systems.
Mhm.
Who do you connect to? How do you identify? And there's certain rules. And as you said, there's a culture, there's a certain practice that comes with each religion. And so what do you lean on? What do you depend on? What do you go to when things happen? Who are you praying to? Do you pray? Do we go to church? Are we going to a
Mm.
mosque?
Mm.
What it can be, again, extremely confusing for a child. So what if there are no children and it's just the two of you? There are certain belief systems that believe that, you take your destiny and your life in your own hands, and it's not about something that is bigger than you. It's about you and what you do, and that you speak things, and you put these things into place, and they give no credit to a higher power for certain things that take place. Well, They're having this conversation and they're saying, "Oh my goodness." For example, "Thank God that I got this new job." The spouse may come back and say, "No, you need to thank yourself. You applied, you did your resume, you interviewed well. This has nothing to do with God." And they may begin to laugh or make a mockery of that. And so now this person is feeling like, "Well, you don't value me because you don't value what I believe." And it can cause relationship issues
Mhm.
because they're not feeling heard and valued, and they feel like that spouse may not be taking what they believe seriously. So I just think it affects every aspect of our lives, not just child rearing, but again, our relationships and how we interact with others as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Here's advice for both. For the person who shifts their faith, changes their religion, and then they have this new fervor and this new passion and a new way of seeing things and doing things. Oftentimes, they become very passionate about what they believe, and the first ones that they want to convert into their faith obviously would be their family.
Mhm.
And if that is you, I would encourage you to slow down,
Yeah.
you know, because your personal journey is not necessarily the journey that your spouse and your children have gone on. And I've seen scenarios because I've counseled couples in this same situation where
Mhm.
now the spouse becomes an infidel, the spouse becomes the wicked one because they didn't come into this new revelation, and
Mhm.
they take on a very strong aggressive approach in terms of force feeding their family into a way of thinking and doing, which can cause crisis in the relationship. And you have to understand that everybody's journeys is different,
Right.
and you want to be sensitive to, you know, where your spouse and where your children have been all their lives,
Mhm.
and give them the space and freedom, like invite them in rather than demanding them in. But on
Right.
the flip side, if you are the spouse and your partner has shifted, what I would say is calm down and pray, because we say this all the time. New is sexy. The new car, oh my god, the smell of the scent of the car, I can't. The new house, oh, this the new relationship. Whatever is new is sexy, but what happens is that feeling that you have initially slowly but surely
Wears off.
wither and wane. And we've seen people
Mhm.
who have jumped into things and then eventually come back.
Yeah.
And so during that particular phase, you want to remain in prayer, right? You want to do your best to maintain conversations in a healthy way, because I have seen a lot of strife and a lot of contention happen between a husband and a wife over faith. And so you have to
Yeah.
have conversations about, okay, so what does this look like in terms of our practical everyday life? And this is a good opportunity to bring a counselor in. And this is the point, it's not just about infidelity. Like, folks, there's so many more things that people struggle with in their relationship than just infidelity. This
Right.
is a huge value systems is a huge one. And so you're
Yeah.
going to need somebody who is partial and non-biased, who can be a listening ear to guide you through, because what it comes down to is effective communication, because both oftentimes feel like they're not being heard, they're not being understood,
Mhm.
and that's where the navigate. And you doing that, let me just tell you something, Lakeisha. I remember the first time I saw you at work with a couple, I was literally amazed and blown away at how you're able to hear what both parties are listening, I'm sorry, are saying, and you're able to re-articulate it in such a way that allows the other person to hear through your lens what they're saying, and you're able to help them to connect those dots, which I thought was powerful. And that's one of the approaches that you take. That's a strong skill set you have. And so if you're struggling in your relationship, because obviously the question came, I would highly recommend you reach out to us at couplesacademy.org so we can help you in this area of crisis that you're in. Because for many people, that's exactly what it is. All right. The
Yeah,
last
no, I definitely appreciate that. And I just want to say, as I was saying about the whole identity thing, right? When you have the one parent that may be Hispanic and the one that is Chinese, the way that you help them is you tell them, you teach your child about both. You guys have a conversation. And that's what you're saying. You have a conversation, you explore both religions, and you guys like you always use the word unpack. You unpack both of them and you identify what you think is going to work best for your family. And it may be a situation that whatever that original was, that isn't what's best for your family. And maybe this new one is. But the most important thing is in any relationship type of situation,
Mhm.
there are some key things that must be in place: communication, listening, acknowledging the other person's feelings, thoughts, viewpoints. There has to be some level of acceptance. You want to make sure that you have rules for your marriage that you guys agree upon. You got to be patient with each other. You have to be loving and understanding. These are all things that no matter what really comes up in a relationship, you still have to do all of those things. And this is
Absolutely.
no different.
No different. No different. I just got a text question where I
Okay.
can't throw up on the screen. And the question is, can a habitual cheater really love their spouse? I want to jump in first and then you can take over. I would say yes and no, because it depends upon the type of love we're talking about. So when we're talking about eros love, right, that emotional, heartfelt love that you have for a person, I can make an argument that yes, they love you. If we're talking about phileo love, a caring love, that you have because you've been with something for someone for so long, I can make the argument that they love you. If we're talking about agape love, now we did a 16-part series on agape love, that God love that exists within us. And when you're really understanding how God unpacks love comprehensively, it is not an expression of love, it is not an
Mhm.
act of love, but I believe that someone could love you, but there's a reason why they're a serial cheater. Just think about a person who is think about an addiction that someone has for alcohol, for drugs, for anything. They themselves know that it's an addiction that's hurting them, but yet something keeps pulling them in. They haven't broken that addiction. Well, there's a sex addiction also.
Mhm.
There's a lust addiction. There's an attention addiction. There's an affection addiction. There's a romance addiction. There's hidden addictions involved in someone who repeatedly goes back, a repeat offender. And so it's a separate issue from, does he love you? Does she love you? I believe that someone can, I think there's a difference between loving your partner and being in love. I do believe that there's a difference with that. But I think that someone can love you in their heart and in how they feel about you, yet still engage in unloving behavior. And that's what causes the confusion, because many people will say, well, if you love me, you wouldn't do it. That's why I said it depends on the type of love we're talking about. And I think it's important that if we're making the Bible final authority in our lives, if we're people of faith, then we have to live according to God's precepts, God's foundational, comprehensive unpacking of what love is. Because if we align ourselves with that, then we could not continue to engage in infidelity, in things that betray our spouse, because we're operating from a different foundation. What are your thoughts?
100% agree with that. I'll add on though, do they know what love is? And also, you said it really depends on how they're defining love. And I 100% agree with that, because depending on how they define love, then yes, they may be loving you because of their definition. But also, I want to know, do they love themselves?
Mm,
Because it is
mm,
extremely difficult
mm.
to love someone else if you do not love yourself.
So true.
So it goes back to, again, how are they defining love? Do they know what love is? And like I said, do they love themselves? Because if they don't, then there's no way that they can love you.
That's a That right there is an excellent point. We talk about the three relationships we have: the one with God, vertical relationship; the one with ourselves,
Hmm.
internal relationship; the one with our spouses, horizontal. And if you don't have a good vertical and internal relationship, then
Right.
how can you have a healthy horizontal? So if I don't love myself, and if I don't
Hmm.
have the love of God within me, then how can I truly receive and give love? And so what I think, based upon your point, there needs to be a working operational definition that you both subscribe to as a
Right.
couple of what love looks like and how it shows up in a marriage, and operate from that premise. So I would encourage you, go back. If you go to the YouTube channel, Couples Academy YouTube, and look at our playlist, we have a 16 part video series on love, and it's powerful. And I think if you watch it together, it would help the both of you in your relationship. Here's another question. A husband says that he wants to reconcile, but he needs to work on himself living outside the house, and thinks that interactions with you are negative, though he's the betrayer. Is it likely to reconcile? This is, I don't know, that question we had before. This may be a different person, but this speaks to how common this is.
Mhm.
So the reality is, maybe those interactions are negative. I would
Yeah.
imagine that they are. That's probably what led to the separation in the first place. The question is, can you be reconciled? The answer is yes, if you do it the right way. And this is why we talk about the controlled separation. And I feel like maybe we need to do another show on it because we keep talking about it. We have videos on YouTube about it. But I think we need to unpack it again because there's several steps to it. And I think most people are trying to do things their own way. They're trying to get out of their environment, which may not be a healthy one. So I just need my space. I need to, because every time I deal with you, boom, 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 boom. But if there is not a pathway, specific steps that you're following, a system of accountability, somebody guiding you through a process to get back to a healthy place, then reconciliation is going to seem impossible. Remember, I'm not trying to reconcile with you just to have the same relationship, the same dynamic, the same interaction. I want something new and I want something different. And in order to have something different, I've got to become someone new and someone different. And if we're both taking the time in our own space to be the best versions of ourselves and then to reestablish what a healthy foundation looks like, then we can come back in. And that is a process that we guide people through with a controlled separation. And many people have ideas of how long a separation should be. Should it, if you give me a year, then maybe. And I'm like, a year? No, 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 no. When a year comes, do you know how much happens in a year? Listen, we believe in anywhere between 2 and 4 months for a controlled separation, for a transition back. And when that process is followed, reconciliation is, to me, something that is a doable and thus sustainable. I want to jump into another question. You can take this,
Yeah.
Lakeisha. Need advice navigating my marriage that was built from trauma bonding. I have been taking individual therapy longer than my husband, but he wants to take couples therapy now, separate since June. So I'm trying to understand what the question is, but whatever you like to respond to regarding that statement, Lakeisha, you can.
Yeah, if I understand it correctly, it sounds like they're saying that they both were suffering from trauma, and that's what bonded them, is that they both had individual traumas.
Mhm.
And so it's great that you have been attending therapy. And it sounds like he is as well, been going to therapy and now wants to do couples therapy. Absolutely. You definitely should do couples therapy. You guys are separated. I don't know for how long. The separation may have been by the advice of the therapist that one of you are seeing, or it could have been your decision to separate. And sometimes you do. This is exactly what you were just talking about, Hassani, that you need to have a controlled separation. So that may have been necessary because you guys may have become codependent on each other because of bonding through trauma. So sometimes that separation is a good thing while you're still working on yourselves individually. And he's saying that he's ready to come together now for couples therapy. I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. Do it. Call us.
Yeah, because you have to remember there is an internal pattern that governs how I live my life as well as you, but relationally there's a pattern. And
Yes.
sometimes if you're separated or you're going to individual counseling, there's something called pattern recognition. And when you're
Hmm.
working with a therapist or a practitioner, that can help you identify the pattern and then break one of the habits, because a pattern is nothing more than habits that repeat itself. When you remove one of those habits and form a new one, you're creating a new pattern, thus creating a different relational pattern when you enter into couples counseling. So it's not either or, it's both and. And so I would, to
Yes.
Keisha's point, encourage you to jump into couples counseling. All right, we got another question. Call of Duty goes viral. My wife can be disrespectful at times and has a tendency to say provoking things. I started filing for divorce yesterday, although I didn't want to. I'm just tired of her mouth and behavior. So we were talking this morning, Lakeisha. Dis, you know, how wives can be disrespectful to their husbands, and we were
Right.
giving like all these points, and it's a real situation. Now here's what stands out to me in the statement. He filed for divorce even though he does not want to. So
Mhm.
you're operating out of desperation because
Mhm.
you don't know what else to do.
What to do.
And when you
Mhm.
don't know what else to do, stop relying on just a show, an article, a conversation with friends. You need to get help because
Mhm.
you never want to make a definite decision,
Yeah,
a life altering decision based upon a current situation that is subject to change.
that's right.
Through couples counseling and individual counseling, you can correct ways. So maybe she is nasty and mean and surly and disrespectful, but that doesn't mean that she always has to remain that way. Was she that way when you first started? Was she always that way? Or did things happen in the relationship that led to that? And let's assume she was that way when she first started. You're never too old to change and make transformation for the advancement of a relationship. So if you're going to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a divorce, why not invest it into your relationship? Because you don't want to leave her anyway. Lakeisha, weigh in.
Well, I mean, if you look down lower at the comments, he said, I also don't want to be with her anymore. So I'm confused
Well,
because in the
well,
first statement he said I filed for divorce but I don't want to. But then he says I don't want to be with her and he says I'm tired of her mouth. So I'm not sure that you fully understand at this point really what it is that you want. And as Hassani said, it does sound like you are desperate. It does sound like you are just fed up, like you literally are just tired of everything that's been going on with her words as well as her actions. And so my question would be to you as you're asking what are our thoughts on this? My thoughts are what led to this behavior? And this is something also I think you just asked Asani, like, was it always this way? Was she this way when you guys first got married? Or was there a shift that something happened and she begun to then speak negatively and had the behavior that you're referencing? Was there something going on that led her to begin to speak this way? If it's always been this way from the first time that you met and now you're just like, I can't take it anymore, and then I get it and I understand. But it doesn't sound like it's that. So I guess
well,
for me,
it, I'm sorry. Yeah.
we
So
always want to know, what's the why? What's the why behind the what? We're always asking that. And do you know why there's been a change in
yeah.
the words and behavior?
So, the fact that in one breath he says he doesn't want a divorce, and in the second breath he says, I don't want to be with her. That's where so many couples find themselves. They're like vacillating back and forth, right?
Mhm.
Because their thoughts, their emotions are saying one thing, their intellect is saying another, the spirit is saying something else, they're experiencing something in their physical body, and they're all
Right.
over the place. And people who are all over the place, either out of desperation, make bad decisions, or because they're confused, they do absolutely nothing. And it's about getting in alignment with yourself. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes more than you alone to do it. There's a process. That's why we say whatever decision you make in your emotions, when you're not truly sure, you're going to regret whatever decision you make. So
Right.
let us take you through a journey to help make that decision crystal clear so that when you make it, you're making it from a position of consciousness, of knowledge, of confidence in terms of how you move forward. All right, another question. My husband was raised in an alcoholic family. I really think he never really knew what love was growing up, just because after 12 years he's doing a lot better, but only after multiple infidelities. Okay. So he's doing a lot better. You know what, Jay? I wonder, where are you in your recovery process for you? What are you doing? Are you getting help? Are you getting counseling? Are you going through a process of healing and transformation? Because as I listen to a number of the questions, I'm wondering, is he still doing what he once did? And now you're struggling with getting over the hurt that he's caused. Are you
Mhm.
struggling with forgiveness? Are you struggling with bitterness? Or is he still showing up in a bad way? That becomes my question for you. Would love for you to get back. And in terms of alcoholism, are you saying that he's an alcoholic? I know he grew up in an alcoholic family. Are you saying that that's one of the things that he personally is struggling with? And that's yet something else that's weighing heavy on you and impacting the relationship in a powerful way? Please, if you wouldn't mind getting back to that, that would help. Um, Another statement: how to deal with infidelity. This is a train crash. Yeah. You want to jump in on that? How should this person deal with infidelity?
This this is a different person, right?
I
Different
know.
question. So they're
Well, I
just
mean,
saying generally, how do you
yep.
deal with
Mhm.
infidelity?
Yep.
One step at a time, one day at a time. Counseling, there's a process which we go through disclosure, we go through ending the affair. Like there's a whole process that you have to go through as it pertains to infidelity. And most importantly, both parties have work to do. We have to, I just feel like we have to continue putting that out there, because the betrayed spouse, a lot of times, at least what I'm finding with my clients, is that they feel like there's not work that they have to do, that because they didn't cheat, there's nothing that they have to do. No, you both have work to do. It's different. It's definitely different, but you both have work that you have to do, and it is a process, and it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And it
Absolutely.
does feel like you got hit by a train when you found it, and especially, if it's one of those one cart trains where it's just the caboose, or if it's like a long train, I think it is influenced by, did you stumble across it? Did you find it, or did they confess? Because when they confess, that feels one way. Both of them still hurt, but one hurts a lot worse if they confess to you versus you finding out on your own. Like that to me feels very, very different to the portrayed spouse. But either way, it still hurts. It's still a process, and there are steps that are involved to healing from infidelity.
Here's a great question I want you to speak to. How do you deal with insecurity surrounding bodily self esteem when it changes quite drastically from your partner's previous praised and expected preferences?
So the one thing is, we all have insecurities. We're all insecure about something. It could be a mole on your face, or whatever. This We all have things that, if we really took the time to just point out all of our uh all of our different things that we have going on or whatever, we can all find something that maybe we feel like, oh, I'm not so happy about that. But are you marinating in that? Are you every day highlighting that? Are you focused on that every single day? I just firmly believe that we are in control of our thoughts. And if you continue to tell yourself that I don't look the way that I used to look, and I know my spouse has a preference for this or that or whatever, you continue to tell yourself that over and over and over and over again, that you're not even able to recognize all of the wonderful things about yourself. Oftentimes, especially, and I can't tell, I don't know if this is a female that's talking about insecurities with self-image, but oftentimes the husband is totally fine and the female is like losing it and driving herself crazy, and the husband is like digging it. He's like, look, I don't care if you are 125 pounds or 225 pounds. I love you. You still look good to me, and it's all good. But I think if you are having some insecurities about your body image, then you have to do something about it. You can't just sit around and complain. And I've been there. I'm like, you got to change the way you eat. You got to start exercising. You have to, make the changes that you need to make so that you feel good about yourself, because it's going to affect every aspect of your life. And the main thing is just being healthy. So if you're not feeling good about yourself, you can't show up the way you need to show up in the bedroom. You can't show up the way you need to show up in the boardroom. You
Mm,
can't show up the way you need to show up when you're hanging out with your girlfriends, if this is a female. So it affects everything that you're
so
doing.
true. So true. Insecurity, which means that your security comes from within, not
Yes.
from without. And oftentimes, when people have insecurities about their body, their physique, their beauty, oftentimes that they brought that into the relationship.
Hmm.
Yes, it's very true. When an affair occurs, it can be a blow to one's self esteem and their body image. That's true. Now, I don't know if that's your particular situation, but yes, insecurities can develop. And let me just say this, because that was a brilliant answer, Lakeisha. So in a book that I wrote years ago called "Pimping from the Pulpit to the Pews: Exposing and Expelling the Spirit of Lust in the Church," there is a chapter in there called "Overcoming the Lust of the Eyes." And it talks about how wandering eyes will lead to your demise. And we gave several
Mhm.
biblical examples of how people who took their eyes and cast them on those outside of their marriage. So, in
Yeah.
essence, if I'm married to you, I'm now looking over there. And now my attention on someone else creates an insecurity in you. So if you have medium-sized breasts and I see someone with large breasts, or if you're tall and now I'm looking at someone who's short, or if you're light and I'm looking at someone who's dark, anything that I'm looking at or putting my focus and attention on can create an insecurity within you. So a spouse, from this perspective, does have a role to play in really filling you back up by making sure that he or she keeps his or her eyes on the prize. Who's the prize? You're the prize. You're the
Mhm.
prize. And listen, we counsel people who are, by the world standards, handsome men, beautiful women, but they don't feel that about themselves because of what has happened in the relationship. Now, that's one issue. So, there is a pathway that you individually can take as well as your spouse, and then collectively to overcome that. But for those who brought it into the relationship, because that's a very real thing too, something was
Yes.
said to you, something was done to you when you were a child and you carried it. And so now you don't feel about yourself the way other people feel, and now you perceive life through your senses, and now you
Mhm.
look for things and listen to things that reinforce the negative feeling that you have about yourself, and it all comes down to your personal self image. And if you don't have a healthy self image, it doesn't matter what anybody says, you're not going to believe it because it's not true to you. And that's where that personal work and development comes from. And yes, I know many women struggle with that, young girls struggle with that, but best believe boys struggle with it too. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, we do.
Yeah.
We both struggle with it. And this is why
Yeah.
we say individual work is so important. Go ahead, Lakeisha.
I think this is the same person she added on, and she's saying, well, the problem is when I feel the best, the healthiest is when I'm self-conscious. He's into curves, which I lost when I got healthy. So she feels the most when she feels the most attractive, she fears that he isn't the most attracted to her. So it sounds like she's lost weight and she's gotten fit and maybe toned up some things or whatever, but he likes curves. Well, this is the thing, you have to be confident within yourself,
Mhm.
because the one thing I do know is that a man can tell when he's dealing with a confident woman. There's something about her when she walks in the room, she commands that room. And so you have to feel good about yourself, because that sexiness will just exude, like it will be oozing out of your pores, whether you're curvy or you're thin or whatever. When you are feeling good, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling confident, that's going to show up. And he can't be anything but attracted to that.
That I 1000%, 1000% agree. Two more questions and we're going to wrap up. Do your attentives have a payment plan or installments? Yes, just reach out. And then here's a question. My husband refuses to recognize the impact of his affairs because they were born on social media. Claims they meant nothing and he had no emotional connection because he didn't touch them. All false. You want to respond to that?
Absolutely. You are right. That is false. It doesn't matter if he never touched another female. It doesn't matter if there was sex or not. We know that there are multiple types of affairs. And at the end of the day, if it's something that he did secretly behind your back, there was lying, there was manipulation, there was covering up, or whatever the case may be, then it's an affair. So you're saying that he refuses to recognize the impact of his affairs. Will definitely get into some counseling. We can help him. We can highlight it. We can break it down. We can, in Hassani's words, unpack it. And we can definitely let him know how it was an affair. And even if we get to a point where he never says it was an affair, the most important thing is he needs to understand the impact that it had on you and how it has
Absolutely.
created damage in
Yes.
your relationship.
Absolutely. Last question. I promise your team has taught me that it's really okay to be selfish and take a time out and love myself. Everything's fixable if you want.
Yes.
I agree with the premise. I love it. I don't. I'm going to challenge you on the word selfish. That has a negative connotation. But yes, taking out time for yourself. You
Yes.
have to do that. And that
Yes.
took me a long time to learn because, like, for instance, and you've heard me say this before, some of you, when I first got married to Danielle, I didn't realize how she had to deal with stress and pressure. She needed to get away. And I'm like, get away? You ain't going nowhere. We married now. What you mean get away? And so I didn't realize that she needed time to retreat for herself. And if she didn't take
Mhm.
that, it would cause her to be tempted to ultimately retreat from everything. Remember, you are
Yeah.
the lowest common denominator in every relationship you're in, and you have a relationship with yourself that has to be protected and loved and properly developed and maintained in order for you to show up as your best self. Listen, I can't be a good husband if I'm not a good Hassani. I can't be a good father if I'm not a good Hassani. I've
Mhm.
got to be good for me. When you get on the plane, the stewardess says, "What? Make sure, in
Put
case
your
you're
own
lost in
oxygen
cabin,
mask on
put it
first.
on yourself first before you put it on somebody else." How can you help somebody else if
If
you're not?
you passed out.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about, guys. I hope you got something out of tonight's Ask the Experts. It was a pleasure talking with you. I see the questions continuing to come in. I promise you, we will get to them on tomorrow night. So stay tuned, 9 p.m. We're coming to you live every single night, Monday through Thursday. But until then, I will see you in the morning for another episode of what? Of the Couples Academy Show. Anything you want to say to them before we close out?
Have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow morning.
Listen. I'm stalling here. I'm stalling here to press a button because I don't have my producer. Producer, where are you? Where are you? If you are an individual who has expertise in production, video editing, graphic design, if you do any of those things, reach out to us because we're expanding our team. We would love to have you be a part of what we're doing to help make impact. But until then, we will see you tomorrow. Love you guys. Take care.